say and spell your name and say your title.
My name is Marc Besch, that's M-A-R-C and B-E-S-C-H, the last name. My title is Research Assistant Professor at West Virginia University.
Okay, thank you. So, Marc, can you explain to me briefly exactly what you did in your test or how you tested the vehicles?
So we did two approaches. One was in the laboratory on a chassis dynamometer, so it's like a treadmill for a vehicle, where we test the vehicle according to the regulations to see if they comply with the emission limits that are set by the EPA for light-duty vehicles in the US. And the other method was we took the vehicles on the road and equipped them with smaller versions of a laboratory measurement device, so-called PEMS, P-E-M-S, Portable Emissions Measurement Systems. So they basically do the same work as a laboratory system, but is more compact and can fit into a vehicle. So we can drive it on the road, drive it in the regular traffic, go on highways, and kind of like simulate real-world driving patterns as people would use the vehicles.
Great. And then what did you find?
So what we found when we tested the vehicles on the regulatory cycles in the chassis dynamometer laboratory, we found the vehicle to be compliant with the regulation. So their emissions limits in terms of NOx emissions was at or below the standard that was set. And then if you take the same vehicle out and now drive it in regular on-road operation with different traffic, different speeds, and different environmental conditions, we saw an increase of up to about 20 times over the standard when we were testing it in the lab.
Did you find different results based on the different driving patterns in the real world?
We characterized the driving patterns in two ways. One was city driving and rural, so suburban areas, so at lower speeds. And then the second one was a route that went on a highway and was characterized by higher speeds on the 75 miles per hour range. And what we noticed was that both had an increase compared to the laboratory data, but during high speed testing or driving on the interstate, emissions were higher compared to city and rural area driving.
Why do you think in-use testing is important?
Why do you think in-use testing is important? Okay, why I'm thinking that in-use testing is important is if you look at the current regulation where you just do chassis dynamometer testing over idealized cycles that were developed initially based on data that came from the road, but it's very limited speed and operating range areas. And so testing a vehicle under more diverse operating conditions, that's where the on-road testing comes into play. And by doing so, by testing a vehicle on the road, it allows you to actually explore a wider range of where the vehicle can operate in terms of load, in terms of vehicle speed, but also in terms of ambient temperatures. You could have higher or lower ambient temperatures. You could have more stop and go, which you may not have on the chassis dyno testing protocol. So I think testing a vehicle in the real world under real condition is the ultimate evaluation of a vehicle if it complies and has lower emissions. Because if you can prove that your vehicle emits low emissions over a limited operating range, that does not necessarily mean that you may be compliant outside. And so testing over the road allows you to really engulf and test over the entire range.